All right, here we go.
Check, check. Check one, check two.
Welcome to the We Are One podcast. I'm Chad, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Ken and MJ. Today, we have a very knowledgeable guest on the show, and her name is Tess Clark. She's an author, artist, philosopher, and independent researcher. Welcome to the We Are One podcast, Tess.
Well, hello. Thanks for that awesome introduction, Chad and Ken and MJ. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And I'll kick it off with the first question and ask you to briefly describe your background and expertise to our audience.
Sure. Well, I have a BA degree in art and history and design. And I did study photography, and I traveled a lot since I was young with my family. I was raised in Mexico, so I went to all the pyramids and all the ancient sites. There are so many really cool places there that people don't really know about. They're kind of kept quiet. So I got into all the, let's say, Mayan mythology and the 2012 end of the world calendar together with my brother, who was also interested in that stuff. And I was also interested in cosmology. So everything I could learn and read about the cosmos was interesting to me. And about 11 years ago, I started reading Velikovsky. I came across the Thunderbolts Project, and I got into all the archives of Velikovsky. And then from there, I went to the sources that he mentioned. So I started reading ancient texts, rabbinical sources, the Hebrew Bible, the very ancient one, not what we know as the King James or any other versions, but the very first Bibles. And then I learned that they were actually based on Sumerian texts. Very interesting. And I took a course actually online from a university in Israel, speaking of how the Atrahasis was the base of their Genesis story of the flood. And I thought it was really interesting. So I just started reading all the ancient texts, and as old as I could. And of course, they have to be translated. I can read a little Latin because I speak Spanish, speak some French, I speak some Swedish. Well, I can read Swedish, English, and but the Latin is pretty easy for me to understand. So a lot of texts are in Latin, and cometographers are the ones who study a natural phenomena on Earth related to the history of what was being seen in heaven. So it could be meteors, comets, which to me are planets, and to them were planets. But the whole thing got changed in the 1800s. We got all the terms changed from mythology into fiction from history. So it was considered history, but it was decoded. So it wasn't meant for the masses to read. It was meant for them to keep as a record of what was going on with the history of the planet, the genealogies linked to the kings. So there's always very, in ancient texts, like the Bible, for example, you have the story of the Exodus. So you have all these calamities and disasters linked to Moses, right? And this whole story. But then there's the story of Noah. And then for every country, on every nation or every civilization, you could call it, the Hindus, they have the same kind of stories. The Puranas are equal to the Bible, for example. They have like the genealogies very clearly defined and also linked to catastrophes that were ongoing. And they're very detailed, very, very detailed. I just did recently a video with Rex where we were talking about some examples, just some examples of the disasters linked to the planets and also represented as the kings that were living during that time.
Mm. So when did you say you first started studying all this stuff?
Around 2011. But I did that while reading the ancient text. I listened to a lot of New Age. I was also really into New Age and ready to ascend and, like doing the whole, I went to India when I was in my 20s. So over 25 years, I've been meditating, and I was really into the whole New Age kind of, it's been repeated.
What started you on that path, Tess?
Well, I was really not happy with what I was seeing in church. I was raised a Catholic, and even though I have, um, well, I have a lot of Jewish in my family because the people that came to Mexico long ago, also recently, I had some European ancestors that arrived in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Some of them were Jews, either Semites or Ashkenazi, and I know there's a lot of problems with those groups. So,
What do you mean by problems?
well, people attack them. There's attacks. It's basically the divide and conquer. So I am not for one side or the other. What I learned is that we live in, I mean, I don't know if I'm giving you already the answers, but I'm just telling you really quickly what I learned, like the bottom of the big picture of what I can see is that we are being divided, and to keep fighting with each other and to not pay attention at really what is going on. And so we use all our energy in just fighting with the, between the little people. I call us the little people. We're not little people, but, the people that are not in power. And so that's what I realized. And religions were definitely, I mean, it's a very, very big rabbit hole. But basically, it was created by these people, not us, some groups that are still in charge. And they were called gods. They were called lords. They were called they were the kings of ancient times. Now we know them as kings or emperors later on. But basically, it's all they're doing. And we've been falling for everything they have put in front of us, the storylines that they have given us, because we don't have the secret knowledge. But the secret knowledge can be found, maybe not exactly everything, but I think about 80%, 85% in ancient text. You just have to take the time and go and read. So it's been about 12 years that I've been doing this.
The living gods, or the gods that started religion, have you looked at a time frame of when you think that
Yes.
occurred, and what sources or texts do you have to, I guess, to be your basis for that? I think everyone has looked into some part of that. What have you found?
Well, the mythologies and the furthest written text that you can find, and historians, ancient historians like Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus is one of my favorite ones that I have read a lot because it has so much detailed information about Atlantis, the Amazons, anything, Babylonia, anything, Jason and the Argonauts, anything that you can read in mythologies and we have heard, like here, little bits and pieces. He goes really into detail, and they are not showing us the whole of his work, but there are books that you can find online and read them. For example, he's one of my favorites just because he has way more information than Plato, but also ancient historians, philosophers, natural philosophers, you can call them historians, because they were writing nature, a combination of what was going on with nature, natural phenomena linked to what was going on with the gods. And for example, Plato talks about the golden age and the different ages, right? He has, I think, 4 ages. And he's actually talking about not a golden age as we think as paradise, but more like a golden race, where there was a golden race of humans. And those golden race of humans are, in my opinion, after reading the text, like I said, mythologies from the Hindus, the ancient Mayans, which are kind of like based on the Olmec text, and the Aztecs are based on the Mayan. It's like they came afterwards, so you have to keep going further back and back. And I found just histories from China also. Let's see, I know a little bit about the Maori, that's more oral traditions, but their written records, the Hebrews have a lot. So yes, the Bible, that's
what
the
time
one that
frame
we
would
know.
you say that this is?
A
Well, I
time
mean,
frame?
Plato
Well,
is
there are
a few hundred years BC, right? Not too much.
Well, there are really detailed timelines linked to people, and that's why it's important to not dismiss, in my opinion, people that are trying to say everything is false. All the texts are false. They're missing out on the history part. Now that the people have changed the text to, as I mean, we keep well, not we, but people keep changing history and meaning of words, as you already know. As we go, as we are living, they're changing terms and everything is changing. So they've done things like that. So they changed like who was the winner or what really happened, what really caused the disasters. That's what I realized. There was a lot of natural phenomena that was going on, and then they would blame it on their enemies. And it's still going on. So right now we won't know, in my opinion, we won't really know what's natural and what's man-made, because they do have a lot of amazing technologies, but then there is the natural stuff, and they can either blame it on aliens or on their enemies. But very rarely, I think they're going to say it's a comet, because they've always used that as their card. It's like their card that we were not supposed to know about the electric universe and the electric interactions between the planets on Earth and between, and it's more complicated. There's a history to the solar system that I found in all the text, and Velikovsky pointed that out, and other people like Comets, Beaumont, which Velikovsky talks about. And some people say, oh, he didn't give him credit, but he does. He just spells his name differently. So you have to spell it differently to find it in his archive, which is a lot of unpublished work. And he has a really amazing book called In the Beginning, or in the archives. It's all free. And that is telling you the history of Earth in how it was captured into the solar system. And that's the War of the Titans. And that would be why there was so many catastrophes in the last 7,000 years. So around 7,000 years is what I have calculated. But then there is the thing about the calendar and the changing of the lunar solar year to the, the lunar year to the solar year. And I can talk about that a little bit more.
I know Chad's trying to formulate questions in his head. I can already see he's like, wait a minute.
No, I have a question. So I was just going back and I was listening to a Billy Carson interview I did 10 months ago, because I'm working on a video. And in that interview I did with Billy Carson, he said that there were various factions of alien races that came to the planet. And what they did was they genetically manipulated the DNA of hominids, the native hominids that were on this planet, and that they mostly looked alike. And so the Asian race, they made these hominids look like the Asian race because those aliens looked Asian. And same for the white, same for the black, same for other races, or I guess, what if you want to call it, just we look identical to the aliens.
Our maker.
Yeah, something like that. I wanted to know what your research has found in regard to what Billy said in that way.
Well, yes, it's something I've gotten really into, the bloodlines, the blood types, the actual blood types and races that you're talking about, and on research on genetic studies, besides archaeology, and the giant, the skeletons that they have been found and that they tell us about, because the Smithsonian was created to go and take away everything that people had on display, and they were finding, so they would take everything away. And all the DNA studies, they're not telling us that, but there are a little bit of information that comes out. That's what I've looked at as well. I followed, besides the reading the text, the ancient text, I followed Brian Forrester and L.A. Marzulli and the Vieira brothers, anyone that talks about the ancient, all the giants, right? The giants, because there is skeletons of giants, but then we also were giants. Everything was more gigantic.
Can you talk about why you think that was? Was it the vapor canopy?
Well, that goes back to the history of the solar system and Earth. And Pythagoras shows that very clearly in his models. And Velikovsky talked about Earth being a comet. Ignatius Donnelly, who wrote a book, Ragnarok, and linked Biela, the comet Biela, to the conflagrations the great conflagrations in Chicago and the other, like all the way to Canada. There was like a comet that passed and it just burnt everything within cities, and prairies within just a night or hours. So he was writing about how Earth was a comet. And what does that mean? Well, it probably means, according to the text, if you read the mythologies and look at the Pythagorean models, and he was an initiate of the ancient Egyptian and Babylonian secret school of knowledge and of Jupiter. That was what it was called, or yes, that was the name of the school that he was starting. But then he started his religion, and he showed Earth as a comet until around 550 or 500 BC, and then his follower or disciple who studied his information, Philolaus, showed the Earth tidally locked to Jupiter, and then after that we came closer to the sun, but I think we'll go back and forth. There is a 575-year cycle that Noah Webster, who's also someone that I have studied, and he wrote in the 1700s, late 1700s, amazing records, just like Velikovsky did, of all the cometographers, natural philosophers, and linked it to pandemics, which is really interesting, and natural phenomena as well. And he has incredible, like maybe 3,000 pages book. You can also find it online, free. And he's the guy who wrote the Webster Dictionary, but this book is not in the Wikipedia page, so you have to go and just research. Well, you can go to my website and look at the sources. But he also linked this, and he talked about this. It's like a larger orbit. So we have the annual, and then which is 365 days now, and that's probably since 2,000 years ago, because they could not measure the solar tropical year until let's see the name of the guy. Well, I wrote I have all this written here so I don't forget, but sorry, jumping.
It's okay. You're saying a lot of information. There's a few things that I want to break down. Chad, did you have a question? When you lean up, you usually have questions.
No, I was just going to ask Tess, how many
but
books
you know
have
what? I'm so sorry. I jumped. I didn't answer your question about the races. Can I go back and answer that?
Sure.
Because I was not here. Sorry. Yes, like that was the best part. Probably everyone is like, wait, she didn't answer. Okay. Yes, I determined that from everything, and you can go and watch my videos because there's a lot of information that supports what I'm saying.
Odyssey has your videos, correct?
Well, I have them on Odyssey. I used to have everything on YouTube, but I didn't like the censoring and they were shadow banning me. So I just myself decided to take everything down and put it on an Odyssey. And I know some people are like, what is Odyssey, or what's going on? And I have it on some of them on BitChute, and I might go to Rumble, but you can find everything on Odyssey. You don't have to sign in to watch them, just if you want to.
I just found that out today, Odyssey. So I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
I recommend you guys. Yep. I recommend you guys. You can automatically have the sign in there and have the videos sent to the archive there in case YouTube shuts you down or removes some videos as like your backup. And it does it automatically, so you don't have to upload, which is nice.
Have you considered Rockfin as an alternative platform?
Yeah. I'm also going to look into that. Exactly. Yeah, there's good ones. Yes. So I think that the original blood type that was on the planet, at least, and I'm going to tell you as far as the written record goes and what some of that of the genealogy, well, linked to genetics that they tell us about goes to. So before that, a lot of stuff could have happened, but we were in an infrared plasma sheath. That's why probably of Uranus or Neptune. And then we came close to Saturn, and that's why we were gigantic. But the original people that were here, I think it seems to be O positive, and that's the Native Americans, what we call the Native Americans. And I believe that from my research that African people came probably from Mars. And that's because of following the story of Marduk and the Ijiji. I might be wrong, but it could be. And the Asian people, which is mostly blood type B, and the Africans would be A. But then they got mixed, so it's kind of hard to, and it's recessive. The O is recessive, and then you can it can get kind of complicated. But if you look at countries, I have that chart. What is the most common blood type? And the Asians could have come from somewhere else, and then, they brought them here because they were also getting, their planet was getting, wherever they were, and they were probably colonizing, they were the O negative, and they arrived and they were known as the Anunnaki. Yes, Anunas. I call them Anunas. And but they had the same names. They were the same people that were founded Atlantis and Egypt and China, everywhere basically. And then they mixed with those races to live their hybrid lines because they just could do that. They just could do it, and they did it because maybe there was like a way to survive or pass the knowledge, and in case they would die out. I mean, I think they're still pure. The same people that arrived, they would be pure bred of whatever they came from, the O negative that didn't mix with the Earthlings or with the blacks or the Asians, if you want to call them Chinese or the races. They're like the more, and the Native Americans, they also mixed with the Native Americans, of course. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really, like, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think that's what in my head, I'm putting together.
What about white people?
Oh, well, we are a big chunk of what it's called the Neanderthals, which would be the Anunas, which had the red hair or burgundy hair, blue eyes. And the blue eyes appeared. There's only two colors of eyes. For people that have green eyes, that means that we have a lot of sulfur, which comes from food, too many eggs, too much cabbage and those kind of cruciferous vegetables, but also from medications and penicillin and antibiotics. So we all are filled with antibiotics since most of us, since we're little, and medications. So your eye changes. So allegedly, according to the geneticist and iridiology, which I also study, which is looking at your eyes for health. You look at your eyes, it's like a map of the body. And they tell you that there's only brown, dark and light brown, which can be, the light brown could be seen as like olive green or hazel, and blue, like pure blue. And then mixtures of those colors, it's just stuff that is in your body. It doesn't necessarily have to be just those two that I said, but our eyes show if there are any kind of substances in your body, it will show in your eyes. So your eyes change. But the blue eye color appeared between 6 and 10,000 years ago. So if you go into the middle, 7,000, that matches exactly the timeline that if you follow the text, that they arrived. But then again, it could be shorter because before the year or the year of when Jesus was born, which is the time of Pisces, the entering of the zodiacal sign of Pisces, before then, they used to count time in months, lunar months, which is from new moon to a new moon, because they didn't have the sun to go by as we were traveling through the solar system.
When do you think the sun appeared? Or when did we get locked into the sun?
Yeah, that's Apollo around, well, it became, see, the mythologies give you a very good hints on which planet was causing catastrophes on Earth and which planet we were closest to. Otherwise, they would not be important and they would be worshipped. Now, some of them, like Jupiter, stayed worshipped a long time. And Saturn also was worshipped a long time, which, yes, a lot of people talk about the black cube and all of that, but it's very simple. It's not really that complicated. And because these people said to the humans, I am the planet, we control the planet, that's our chariot or throne of heaven, then they would be maybe worshipped a little longer. And then they would come back and leave, like the importance or the worship of these planets.
Yeah, we definitely want to get into that. Those are questions that I have too about the planets and the gods and the living gods and how do they get associated with actual planets? Is it more of a worship thing, or I've seen some people say that when living gods died, they went and made that planet. I mean, I don't really understand kind of how that whole cycle worked. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes. Now I have a question. You send me those questions. If you want, we can like go through them the way in the order that you gave them to me, because I think they're really good. They're really good questions. But we can also do it like that. I just have to jump through here. And I just wrote the answers because I don't want to miss giving you any good information, like key information that
Right.
it's like, darn it, I forget to say that. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm not stuck in anything in particular.
Okay. Well, that question was on the PDF, right? About the planets. Well, let's start with the thoughts on religion and historical beliefs.
Okay, great. Yep.
Is this a simulation? What is this reality? What have you found on this? That was your question. Yep. So yeah, this is really hot. And I know Chad has been talking about this, and everyone basically. it's really popular. So
the simulation part, you mean?
This is yes, the simulation and the hologram and the flat Earth, which I don't believe in the flat Earth.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. That's going to be great.
Yeah, but I can tell you why. Okay, so some ideas that I have regarding the simulation. I don't consider reality a hologram or a computer program, even though consciousness, which you could call the creator of all, or God, or the grand architect, or whatever you want to put the name of, whatever creates that energy or power Force. That creates everything, follows or uses a mathematical blueprint. And that's where of creation that repeats throughout the cosmos. And that's, I think, where people get confused with or think that it's a computer program, because we have copied the computer, the people that invented or came up with these, softwares and computer programs. I think they are mimicking reality, but it's not the other way around. So they're just they saw nature, they know nature, because then, the spiraling phi ratio, the golden mean, it repeats everywhere, and everything spirals, and everything is energy, electricity, plasma, electromagnetic fields. So you could say that repeats over and over and over. And mathematics is one way that this happens. So I'm going to continue. So what resonates, that way is similar. But what resonates with me is more something that I learned when I was studying Siddha Yoga, which is a type of yoga and I went to India, like I said. I went to New York. I was in Mexico in different ashrams of the same type of people. They would talk about this all the time. They said, this is the play of consciousness. We live in a play. It's like a play. So it's like a game in a way, or like a play put on by actors. Like this famous writer used to say, the
world's a stage.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So they say that while we are living it's real. They call it Maya. But Maya, it's an illusion because it's not everything that we are. And we are basically part of consciousness. We are consciousness playing a part. And according to the sub-school of Hinduism called Shaiva Siddhanta, Maya is the world, the physical world and the cosmos that we see, made out of separate objects and people and things, trees and people and rocks, animals, and all the elements. And this is an illusion that it is the only reality. So that is the illusion, that this is all there is, and this is all that we are. We're just, we're just a body, and we're a person. And Maya is reality and truly existent. That's what they believe. Caused by, this is a little just like, this is how they put it, by the imperfect, discriminating intelligence called buddhi. And it is this aspect of prakriti, which is also part of consciousness, and the nearest to pure consciousness. So it's just a way of saying, something is creating this. Mm-hmm. This is that we consider the world and reality. And the Hindus do not consider Maya to be false or an illusion in the terms of this is a hologram and that's it. Like there's no matter. We
frequency
and
energy. Yep.
Yeah. And instead they consider it to be real, but illusory, that we are separate and this is all that we are. Another version says Maya is an illusion. This is a core concept of the Advaita Vedanta, or the non-dual school of Vedic thought. And it's key to understanding the way that we construct the world through false perception. Maya is thinking we are separate from the divine. Enlightenment is realizing that this isn't true. That's all enlightenment means. It doesn't mean that we're going to fly and turn into a light body. No, it just means we are not just this. I am way more, and we are eternal, and we are probably pervading the whole universe and all the
that consciousness
dimensions.
is fundamental.
And under Maya's influence, the Atman, the soul, mistakenly identifies with the body. And we accept thoughts as I am white, or I am black, or I am Chinese or Asian. This is my house, my country, my religion. The soul identifies with a temporary body and everything connected to it, such as the race, gender, family. I'm poor, I'm rich, I have this much money in the bank, I don't have a car, I have 5 cars. Religion, I believe this or that. And under this sense of false ego, which is a false identity, the soul aspires to control and enjoy matter. However, in doing so, then the ego continuously serves lust, greed, and anger. And anger and frustration, because there's a lot of times that we are frustrated. You know, you work so hard, and where is the money? They steal it from you, or they take it, or you know what I'm saying. You just do your part, and sometimes things don't go the way you want. And in frustration, the ego often redoubles in its efforts, and compounding mistake upon mistake falls deeper into the illusion. So to me, that would be, I think this is really important though, because it is sort of a simulation, but not in the way they put it. So I don't know if that helps. And if you want to say something about that.
Yes, and Chad does too. He's dying to say something.
No, I had a question from way back, but maybe I'll save it for later. I'm just curious to know what MJ thinks. He hasn't said anything yet. What is your question, MJ?
I have a few. I just don't want to derail or train of thought, because I'm just absorbing. Is very cool hearing you kind of, because you're talking about a whole lot of things and the way you weave them all in together. I guess one of the things I think would be interesting to just get an understanding on is when you say they, when you say, well, they, who in your mind, just, and I know they can be deep, but who is they? I guess you agree there is a they, but who is they? How would you summarize who they is, quote unquote?
Well, it's the people that are still controlling the planet, and they arrived. They arrived about 7,000 years this time around. They probably colonized the whole solar system. They were trying to survive the catastrophes and going back to the catastrophes. So Earth, the whole solar system was going through like an upheaval, and these people that were the people that arrived on Earth, you could call them ancient aliens, the ancient astronauts. But remember, they also arrived with other types of races or creatures. And yes, creatures like human, like that's, you know, that, I mean, maybe they also they maybe came with animals too, that some people say that goats and horses were brought by them, or the text actually say that. But I don't know. It could be, maybe not. Some people say the whales also came from, you know, the other stars and other places. But these guys are the ones. It's not very long ago that this happened, really, if you consider the timeline that I'm talking about. And there's written text. And if there was no written text, if there are written text, that means that it's not very long, because we still have the text. And there's been so many catastrophes. You can just see when something small happens, just a volcanic eruption or tsunami, it destroys everything. So if we can still see things that are, you know, ancient temples and the text and this and that, that is not very old. So people that like to put things in a very, very long time, like hundreds of thousands of years, I think they are missing the point that of a lot of things. But Velikovsky also had a book called Earth in Upheaval, which is very important, because people say, oh, he didn't know anything, you know, what did he know? But that's his whole study and putting together the geological data, and the scientists that they know, because they know, these people know, some people know what is going on, but they don't tell us that. It's like they say one thing and they know one thing. So, but sometimes you can find the paperwork that tells you the correct information.
What do you think is the oldest recorded information? I know we don't have it, obviously. I mean, you know, I guess you could say they have it. What do you think that this I'll call it a reality. Do you think that this reality, this time period that we have now, is 7,000 years old? Do you think that, or do you think it is 1 million years old? Like, how do you put it in the perspective, in the grand scheme of all this solar system history, the universe history?
Well, that is a big question, and a question that I cannot
We're here
answer.
to only ask big questions. The little ones are irrelevant.
That's a great question. So if you just follow the text and the mythologies and the people that are considered gods, the lords and the kings, and when written as far back as the history goes of what was happening on the planet and the catastrophes, remember, catastrophes erase everything. They erase everything, and they bury. There's so many, like people call them mud floods, which are really just floods that, yes, carry mud, and mud hardens into rock-like stuff. So it's really hard to get and dig underneath that mud. It takes sometimes another catastrophe for it to be revealed to us. And then you go, oh, look at that. There's the bones of the hybrid Neanderthal with the
I think
sapiens.
that those things come in cycles. I think sometimes when there's a deluge or a reset, I think that it's cyclical. Like when one happens, it might reveal one from 2 or 3 times ago in that history aspect. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, yeah, what I have to say about that is that, number one, these people kept impeccable records because they wanted to know when the next one was going to happen. And they not always know the exact time and date, just like Jesus said, I cannot tell you when it's going to happen, because no one knows. And this is because of the electromagnetic nature of the planets and the comets, which are rogue planets that are either moving between 2 celestial objects that are called asteroids, or they are coming in from a very far place in the solar system, maybe from Neptune or further out, or from the front side of the sun, because everything is like a spiral. We are in a vortex solar system, like Schoberger and others talked about, the Hindus. And yes, there's this guy that also had a helical solar system. So the highly elliptical orbits of planets can make them into comets because they are discharging a different current. And I don't know if you know Birkeland currents, but they are concentric circles. And that's why the concentric circles are really important in all the petroglyphs. And I mean, there are many symbols that all depict, like the crosses, all crosses, the Ankh, everything they were seeing in heaven, because there's plasma, the same, like I said, as below, so above. So So once you see a comet interacting with the currents, we also have a biofield or an aura, and everything moves the same way. The DNA, the water in a tornado, the currents of the jet stream, everything is spiraling. That's why you see cool stuff that spirals on the Great Spiral of, Norway, or the fuel of these, or the meteor. Everything spirals. So let's see. I kind of
that was the history. It was the history, basically the observer effect of history. Is it?
Yes.
Is it 7,000 or so years old?
Well, that's what we have written. Yeah. So this time around. So remember, these people. Imagine Earth. Just imagine Earth and the people that have been colonizing the different places of the planet. They moved around because they needed to survive. Besides, they were greedy and they wanted to take over, which they are these people that arrived with the knowledge, and they had more knowledge than the Earthlings.
So they came from outside the Earth.
Yes, maybe Elohim, El refers to Saturn. So they might have been like their main hub on Saturn, or orbiting Saturn, not Saturn, because Saturn was probably an dwarf star, and it lost its plasma sheath, just like Uranus and Neptune, which are also unlit dwarf stars, and Jupiter as well, because the Electric Universe, the Thunderbolts project, the late Thornhill, talks about how when planets or stars come into the plasma currents, which are called Birkeland currents of the sun, which has a tail like a comet. Every planet has a tail like a comet, except that it doesn't glow all the time. When they came into this, what is it called, the solar wind, which is not wind, it's just electromagnetic counter-rotating currents.
Yep.
Then they lost their plasma sheath. So they could have been on Saturn just because of the text and the Elohim and El, and Saturn was worshipped like big time. And yes, and we were close to Saturn. So the sun, maybe we came here into the tail, and then we made our way. And comets, planets, get captured by these electromagnetic fields and the tails of the bigger planets temporarily, but sometimes they keep going towards the sun, which is what happened to Earth, Mars, and Venus. Mercury, seems that it was already orbiting between the sun and Jupiter, which seemed to be the original binary of the sun, like they were a binary star system. And then the others came in, the other gas giants with us. And maybe the Anunnas, or the ancient aliens that arrived on Earth and pretended to be the gods and still rule to this day. And all the kings have said we descend from them. And, that's why they have always like Greek gods and their murals and their statues, and they worship them, and, they just worship them and they pay honors to them. And still we do with the Marvel movies, and every name of every important company has the name of a, some kind of mythological person of different cultures, not only from the Greeks. But so these people, to finish answering MJ, so these people are the ones that came, they had the knowledge, they didn't tell it to the humans because of the earthlings, or the other ones that they brought with them, maybe to some of them, and that's the secret schools of knowledge and the initiates, the high priests. They usually were of the bloodlines, always, or they were brought in, and in order to create allegiances or like a new hybrid lines, they would mix with the non-O negatives and create like the B negatives and the AB negatives and the O negatives. And when you watch their documentaries, they say we are different. We're different than the rest of you. They tell you that, these kings and duchesses, and they say that, and I'm like, my jaw just drops, and I'm like, they just don't.
How many of these that came from outside of this planet to either breed or hybridize? How many of these are there? Because I get the feeling that you're going to say that there's more than one they, obviously, right? That we're all created not by the same they. Correct. How many days do you think there are? Because I've seen some of your videos, and I agree 100% that some of the pictures, some of the background, like the owl, the dragon. There's another one that I'm missing off the top of my head, but there's different ones. Are those relating to a they?
Yes, they took on the symbols of animals to represent their bloodlines.
Yep.
Like Lilith is the owl, but also some people think it's Inanna. And what happens, Inanna, it's Venus as well. She was represented. And I'm going to get into the next question that, well, you had the Mandela effect, but then Enki, who is Enki and Lucifer, which is interesting because Venus is also related to him. But they were different people all around the planet. Imagine your guys' families. You have a family, and then you split the planet, and each one goes and takes a place. And if the sun is the most important one, which was Apollo, that was the arrows of Apollo, when you also ask, when did we first get affected by the sun or came closest to the sun? It was just around 200 BC, not before that. Apollo wasn't even important. He was just like, well, called Utu Shamash, but he wasn't like the main god. He was just the son, the grandson, the brother of Inanna. Inanna was Venus, represented by Venus, but she was a physical human-like, very, very close to us. And I don't believe they did the genome sequencing that we are doing now per se. I think that they just started having sex, intercourse, and trying to get pregnant with the women.
What about the giants coming through? I mean, how did they breathe the same way, or we just slowly got smaller?
Yes. That's why the fallen angels, the sons of God, said that the females of Earth, they were not beautiful, they were compatible. That was the original word, compatible. So they could have children. Now, what happened first is that the females, because they were O positive, the Earthlings, they could get impregnated by the O negatives. And then I go really into detail why that happens. But basically the O negative, which also points to not being from Earth, means that they don't have basically the D protein to produce any antibodies that will help you fight diseases. So if you get a shot trying to protect from something, the body cannot produce the antibodies of an O negative person. And then B will have some kind of antibodies that A doesn't have and O positive doesn't have or has. And that's why people die when they get a blood transfusion. It's totally alien to the body, and the body just goes into shock. And so what happened is that they first interbred with the females. Well, after trying, that's why there's the stories that the children were, or the creations were deformed, but also speaks of mutations, because there was a lot of electromagnetic radiation and X-rays and gamma rays coming in from all the planetary events and novas. So, but there was the two things happening. Humans, plants, animals, everything was mutating, and then they were interbreeding. So that's also what happens, and it has to be taken into account. You cannot just dismiss that, because there is something called the Ebner effect, and there's also Raymond Rife, and there's another guy, Wilhelm Reich, that have done experiments with electricity and electromagnetic fields, and they actually mutate life in their, like, right in front of their eyes. So, X-rays and even thunderbolts also have known to mutate and passing comets. But going back to do you want me to stop? Did I answer the?
How many of these do you think, just roughly? I mean, have you seen?
How many? Well, you have to follow the text. Again, going by the text. That's the. No,
I haven't followed it. That's what I have you for.
Yeah. The best numbers are 200 fallen angels, and the Anunnas were 600. The fallen angels, which are the Igigi, the equivalent of the Igigi, they came after, because they were allegedly, from the text, on Mars, most probably on Mars, and that was Marduk. Marduk is a very important character, is the son of Enki, because he was always upset. They had rivalries, that they were half brothers, and one was elder. Enki was eldest, and there probably people know the stories. Enlil was not the eldest, but he was the son of Anu and his sister. And his sister, yes, and always the Antu, or I think Antu. Always, just like the Egyptians kept doing, and a lot of royals around the planet still do it, but they don't tell you. They were marrying brothers and sisters. Even Lot was marrying his sister, and they would marry their sisters or half sisters to continue the lines. And so I think it was around 600 of the original Anunnas, according to the text, and then about 200 of the Igigis, give or take. And maybe some of them came later. I don't know. It doesn't really say clearly. And other races of aliens that Chad was asking. Again, I haven't seen anything on the text that says, oh, we brought the little people, or we brought the giants, or we brought the insectoids. No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that, unfortunately. They just talk about human-like. But there was mutations. So that's
what I was kind of trying to find out is if you think that there's they say it's told, I guess, that the world was run by certain families, right? 4 or 5 families, 8 families, whatever that might be. So my interpretation is that those are all different bloodlines, right? So I guess I was trying to see if there were anything in the text of how many different bloodlines came to Earth or incarnated upon Earth, or whatever you might say that to mean. Are there a certain number of that, and how do they distinguish them? How many different races? I guess master race would be a good way to put it. Alien master races.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the O negatives. O negatives, but they got so mixed with a lot of the people around the planet that because of survival, they had to, or sometimes to create peace treaties, that's why I think the DNA is so important right now, and everyone's getting their DNA
and blood
taken.
blood types. And so I bought the blood type kit probably about 2 months ago, and I was saying I'm O negative. I'm sure I'm O negative. Both my sisters are O negative, so they say. And I did it today. I stuck that stupid thing in my finger and was like, man, that hurts for a hot second. And I am O negative. But my question, I guess, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's a personal thing, but are those tests testing for O negative, meaning that there's no distinction between O negative and RH null on those tests? Because if the blood doesn't coagulate, then how do you know if you're truly RH null or if you're just O negative?
Well, you have to get the test for that says O negative, but I think it means the same thing basically, because it means that if it coagulates, that means that you don't have the D protein. You're just looking for the D protein that is absent or not. That's
well, how many proteins? Because there's multiple. There's 50 something proteins. Is that
the D protein as a David? Well, the test they sell will show you if you're O negative or not.
No, I am O negative, but what I'm saying is that's only testing for the RH D protein. So there's I think there's 50 or something total antigens that you could have. So RH negative means that I have more negative proteins than I do positive proteins. Is that correct?
No, that means that you don't carry the D protein that produces antibodies.
But there are other antigens.
Yeah, but that's different because the A has antigens, the B has antigens. Right. A negative and B positive and O positive, they have certain antigens because they have so yes, that's what you're saying. And then there are some like, kind of combinations of the A blood, negative A, and there are a little different, like King Tut. He was like a little kind of weird thing. But basically, in my understanding, it's kind of simple. That was the O negative that arrived, and it was around 600 and 200, according to the text, and give or take. And I don't know if more arrived later or not, but it's possible that they're still alive, the pure lines. But I think that just as in the old times, they didn't really want to be around the humans. So they had their high priests and their intermediaries dealing with the humans. So maybe the same thing is going on. We just don't know their names because they don't want to be known. And they live probably in, their private islands, places that are off the
radar,
military base,
radar, or they could be under the radar, literally,
yes,
quite under us.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question, Tess. Going all the way back, I can't get a word in edgewise with Ken here, but I'm just kidding.
I don't mind. I've been excited for like a week and a half since she said she would come on. I'm like, oh yes.
Yeah, I'm just joking with you, but you mentioned before that the different races were kind of seated by these Anunnaki or aliens in their image. So we have the black race, the white race, the Asians, which you've been talking about throughout. Why is it that though there are varieties in all the races? Like, the Ethiopians don't look like, the West Nigerians, and the Japanese look distinctly different from the Chinese, from and even from Koreans. And then, of course, with white people, there's a lot of variety as well. How did that come about? Was that something that was evolution from the planet itself, or was that created by the Anunnaki?
That's a really great question. Well, just look at dogs. Look at dogs. They all allegedly come just from wolves, and you have all these different types of dogs, right? So I think that they were definitely having, like, they had the strongest. Well, there were a lot of strong white, people like the Vikings. I mean, but I lived in Sweden, and let me tell you that the Vikings are not very tall, like they make us want to think. They're not. The northern people, maybe in southern, the Danish are tall, very tall. But there was a lot of Swedes that I've met, because I lived in Sweden for many years, that were really short. And they were tiny, actually. They were like even shorter than me. I'm not very big, not very tall. So I'm around 5'3". And I was like, what's going on in here? And those are like the Sami people, which are the, you know, the above the circle, the polar circle, they're almost like the equivalent of the Alaskan or Eskimos. They're kind of like the equivalent, but they're not. And they also have a different blood type. They're like really weird compared to the rest. And also the Basque, you know about the Basque. But I think that, you know, between the mutations that were going on and they're mixing and mating and maybe creating, like they were saying, oh, look at, I mean, it's just like, it's like selective, not eugenics, but in a way it could be eugenics. If you get like the best specimen of this person and this person that you want for certain tasks, then you look for their attributes and then you just have them interbreed, right? You just have them breeding, and then their children, if you have a tall father and a tall mom, the child probably is going to be tall. If you want someone little, then you would get the shortest people and then just have them have kids. Or if you want certain attributes, the most muscular or whatever, the mental capacities. I don't really think that they have mental capacities all that different, to be honest, except their larger skull size. So maybe there was more brain in there to do more naughty things because they were not very spiritual. They were really very intelligent, but they lacked that spiritual connection that it's kind of interesting, but that they talk about. So it's kind of like they don't walk the talk, because they did have a lot of good information about like the Hindus and how to ascend, or even all religions, you know, they have really good information, but they don't seem to walk the talk. And that, to me, it's just like a question. Why don't they believe in their own theories or what they teach us?
Medical science would say that a person might be better off if they have a lot of mixed genes. So if a black person and a white person interbreed, or an Asian or a white person, rather than like two white people, like, you know, two Ashkenazi Jews, it's like their children will have more problems with offspring. Is that true? Is there truth to that?
Well, that's interesting, because if you look at some studies, and some people say, oh, that's not true because I am this or that blood type, and that's not my case. But you have to look at the study in general, and also each person has their own diseases or problems. If you had this or that happen to you when you were a child, then your health status is going to be different than someone else that didn't have this or that, right? So it comes from those two. But definitely seems to be that the healthiest is AB positive, which is what you're saying, that you combine all of them. And the least healthy is O negative. And I know people don't like hearing that, although O negative is resistant to
Malaria.
cholera and HIV and the new type of virus.
Well, it's
allegedly.
I seen the link to malaria, which is sort of interesting, because the
malaria,
ivermectin, which is a malaria related drug, has been assisting those people, but it's not something that O negative people seem to need regardless. So those two links are very, very curious as well. I think it goes back to basically T cell memory in your immune system, as well, as far as, you know, the genealogy of your line. That definitely has something to play with it too.
Yes, I agree. And there's been also tribes trying to kill each other, right? And doing ethnic cleansing. Mm-hmm. So, and spreading their seed, including Epstein and others that are still alive right now. I'm not going to say their names, but I think Mackey, many people don't even know him.
I think I know who you're
Yes, and donors, sperm donors, and Hitler, you know, they were trying to spread their seed as far and wide as possible, so their descendants would survive no matter what if there was catastrophes. And they have been ongoing catastrophes. But they, like I said, when I was talking about when is catastrophe going to happen, no one knows. No one knows. Because even if there's a cyclic thing going on, this comet that is supposed to come and interact with Earth or Mars or Venus or whatever, something might happen that it gets stuck because of the electrical interaction, and it slows down, and then it didn't arrive when it was supposed to. And that used to happen a lot. The prophets, they were astronomers, astrologers with the information But if their calculations were not right, and it even happened to St. John the Baptist. He got decapitated. He changed the end of times, or the end of the world, twice. He recalculated when Mars, that was actually Mars, because I looked at the cometographers, and that was when we were closest to Mars. When that was going to happen, he couldn't even tell, and he was a Gnostic Pythagorean astronomer. He had they had the information, so no one can tell you. So don't ever believe when someone is telling you 2040 or 2024. They don't know history, and they don't know cometography, and they don't know they're called the lawless, the planets, the comets. That are the ones that are out of, coming out of their regular orbit. And Earth can get out of its orbit. Mars can get out of its orbit.
Do you study astronomy as well, Tess? It sounds like you do.
Yeah, the electric universe. Oh yes.
Yeah. So the electric universe, are we still in a plasma shield around the Earth, or because we're not able to get out? Is that what is your interpretation of what you think? Are we able to get out? Have we ever been able to get out? Have we been stuck here for 100 years?
Yeah. Have we gone to the moon? Have we really gone to the moon?
No.
Yes, but not like they tell us. So what they show us, I think they have electromagnetic propulsion, what some people call anti-gravity, and gravity to the electric universe. And Velikovsky wrote a really great article. It's very simple, called A Universe Without Gravitation, which he explains how electromagnetic fields can explain all the gravity effects. But yes, what happens is that space is not our turf, is their turf. They're like, everybody said who they are.
So we've been grounded, do you think? Or it exists, or?
Yes, it does exist, because there is incredible information. I think that the information that could be, I'm not saying that it's for sure, but I am leaning towards, I'm very critical and very seldom believe things. If I don't go and read as much as I can and just put things together in my head and say, okay, yeah, and follow my heart, my intuition, and meditate on it and say, yes, that makes sense. But looking at the information as well, I think that they are just trying to confuse people a lot, keep us confused. So the more information is put out there, and I used to promote really weird things, like silly things, when I was a new ager. So I don't want anyone to feel bad and stupid, or like, oh, you're dumb, or no. Because a lot of people, and I had good intentions. So a lot of people talk about things that they believe it's the truth, but maybe when they get more information in front of them, looking at it themselves, not being told by someone. And I always tell people, go and read the stuff yourself, and you make up your own conclusions. This is what I have come up with, my conclusions, but you can make up your own, and don't believe me, because that's not the right way of doing it. And that's what happened to me. And then I was like, man, I sound like a total idiot when I remember what I said. Why would I say that? But I didn't know any better. So am I leaving too much out of the discussion?
No, but I was wondering, can you go into this whole why all this flat Earth started coming about in around 2014? And
yes, Henry Mako. Henry Mako, I don't know if you know him, but he has a great expose of who started the flat Earth. Psyop, I call it a Psyop, psychological operation, confusion. And he was an ex-NASA scientist, and they're probably laughing their asses. They're probably just like laughing and saying, look, we got everyone believing. Haha, we're so clever. And yes, I gotta take my hat off to them, because they know how to do this. Like very few people listen to me, but so many people are listening to, they have fallen for this thing. And I'm like, wow, they're experts. They're experts at doing this. And what's going on is that before, they used to tell humans that the Earth was flat for a little while, just for a little while, because they didn't want them exploring and going away and being free and finding the places where they shouldn't be and getting to they just wanted to control. It's control. And right now, everything is about control. Everything they're doing, everything that is going on, it's about control. That's their That's what makes them like super excited. It
So
makes them
so
super
you're saying
happy.
in your opinion, they don't want to disprove it because they want it to be unknown. They want disinformation. Is that what your process is? Because it seems to be like it is definitely a chess game. Mike knows my story. MJ knows my story. I've told it to Chad. Like they promote disinformation so that you won't look it up. You won't look for truth. And they'll say, oh, there it is. And then you'll move on. Meanwhile, there is truth in it, but they won't disprove it, in your opinion, is because they want you to think that there's disinformation. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, well, very simple. I think the electric universe got really large, and when very big, it started to get very, very popular. So they had to come and mix something really crazy with the electric universe. So to a lot of people, when they say flat earth, oh, you're retarded. You are retarded because what is wrong with you, And so they just throw everything out. Just like with the Q movement, there's a lot of good stuff, but then there was some crazy stuff that made all these people look insane and crazy.
Yep.
So they do it on purpose. And so they want to just get people really confused. And, there's a lot of good things on all of these in Psyops. There's a lot of good information. So you think, well, if this is true and I can see it, it makes sense, then the rest must be truth. But what I can tell you is that from reading the text and seeing history repeats over and over and over. And they have like a manual that has worked so well for so long that they have been here. And that the most important thing is to keep people not understanding space, the nature of the electromagnetic universe, because religions used it as their playbook to control people. And people were so afraid, and fear, ruled by fear. And look at what's going on now too, ruled by fear. That always works. So people will just say, yes, whatever you say, anything you say. So that's why they have to keep these. The history of the Earth, the solar system, the comets as planets, not as just plasma that it's, a hologram, because that's what they say. No, stuff happening.
Is there waters above? I mean, what do you believe based on that? I want to ask one question and then I want to get to that answer. But so, I know what your answer is going to be because I've looked into it extensively, and I know that you probably had the same thought process. If there's some truth into the FE phenomenon, which we just said what it was, how big is the Earth? Because that seems to be that is the ultimate answer to what we're talking about here. That is the disprover. If you can't prove you can't prove the curve, then I guess we have a problem. And the only thing that points to me is that it is bigger than what we've been told it is. Would you agree with that? Or how does the math not add up, I guess is the question.
Well, there are some interesting things about that. Rex had a guy send his balloon really high, and you could see the curvature. By the way, he had his own balloon, so it wasn't like a NASA or someone. It was somebody that he knows. So, and then there's other things you can do to prove that. But I think that that's really not important. The important thing is, are we wasting time discussing that? Are we fighting and just discrediting each other? And I think that is the important part, never to do that, because that's what they want. So to look at the important things. What is important? Well, there is free energy that people are using. And the question again, Chad, you asked, have we been to the moon? And I think that there are some people that are traveling and they do their things, but it's not what we think. It's not their little rockets, phallic rockets that explode and everyone dies. They use electromagnetic propulsion. And they probably have that. I don't know if everyone uses it. I don't know if everyone is allowed. Maybe certain people are allowed to do that. But I definitely believe there's that, because there's people, Schauberger in 1940, he invented an electromagnetic propulsion saucer type. He had it already going, and he had this amazing technology to purify water and to do all kinds of things. And are we using that? Or since Tesla and all these other people that have invented amazing
not to that extent.
Electromagnetic and other plasma technologies, no, they get put away, they get killed. And people that are talking about these also are put away and killed, like astronomers. I'm no one like really, like I'm no one in a very high place, or, you know, it's like, whatever, just let her say whatever she wants. I'm not worried about that. I don't have a big following either, so I can just go ahead and say it. And I don't belong to any secret society, because also those people are not allowed to say this. If they talk, they'll go bye-bye, and their families too, because they have those agreements. So it's good to not be in those places. And there's a lot of information that it's out there in the open, but you have to go and look at it, and you have to read it. And the ancient philosophers knew that the earth was a sphere, and they always talked about the spheres, and the, like Pythagoras, he said, the music of the spheres, that was referring to the planets. But I don't want us to get stuck on that. I just want to talk about why this is happening, and why all these psyops, they're trying to do. So I just think, just keep people confused, fighting over if it's flat or round, and just keep them there.
The plasma electric Earth makes sense, because I went out and bought a telescope, and it's not a $1,000 telescope or whatever. It's, you know, a couple $100. And every time I look at the stars, Venus was so close and so bright. I mean, where did Jupiter go, by the way? I mean, I didn't ask you that question, but when you look at the planets that are super bright in the night sky, all you see is these oscillating lights. So it would make sense, if we really do have a large electric plasma shield, why they would do that. So that kind of makes sense. But where did, I guess my question would be on that one, where did Jupiter go? Because it was coming in, they've been coming into each other. And then last night I went up there and it was only Venus. And I'm going, where the hell did Jupiter go?
We are in a spiraling orbit. All of the planets spiral. So that's when the planets counter rotate. They're not counter rotating, they're just doing this. So they look like they are going in retrograde. So we're doing this, everything is doing this. But then there's also Ptolemy talked about the cycles and the epicycles. The cycles are the smaller orbits, what we call our year on our planet. And the 575 would be the epicycle. So we are moving, spiraling this way, but also going like this, and also doing this. So actually something like that. I mean, I wish someone would do the helical universe in the correct way, because it would be really, really easy to understand. And so that's why we don't see it. And we also have the wobbling of Earth. It's not Earth wobbling, it's the sun it's also spiraling current. And think about it. That's what creates the precession. We're following all this. There's so many like orbits, like moving spirals within spirals within spirals. And we do have a sheath, plasma sheath, but it's not on glow mode until you get the auroras. That's when we're glowing like a comet. That's what the auroras are. And we just had a really rare double aurora, North and South Pole, happened just a couple days ago, and they're like, oh, this is really rare, that shouldn't happen. That's because they don't want us to understand what's going on. And we are getting closer to Jupiter and Venus, by the way, and we'll be closest in that 575 year. Last time was 1690, around there, because, and also Mars, which Noah Webster talked about. He said we're closest to Mars in 1766, I believe.
So we still have 100 years or
about
so,
decades. And that's why King Louis said, I'm Jupiter. And they saw also stuff happening on Jupiter with planets. It was like fireworks. It was like bolts, plasma bolts going on between the comets and Jupiter. That's what happens. And that's what, it's there, but you just can't see all the planets all the time.
Do you guys have any questions about that before I ask about the other stuff?
Yeah, I got a question on they, kind of going back to that, because it sounds like at this point in the game, with all of the mixing and all of the interbreeding that's happened, let's say the purity that was maybe there at the beginning has been diluted to this point, to where we're all mutts, if you will, quote unquote. So would we be as much of they as quote unquote they are? Is it now a planet full of aliens looking for the aliens, like that's it. It's us at the end of the day, or are we part of they now? And now there's still a control system. There's still those people that want to control and things of that nature, but they're no different than we are at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it all goes to the Y chromosome, back to the Y chromosome and the mtDNA, and people still carry it. The mtDNA is that living substance of that it gets passed from mother to daughter compared to the Y chromosome, and it only lasts, I think, 15 generations or 700 years, if I'm correct, something like that. And that's interesting. So that's the Jewish or the people that follow the goddess lines of the Gnostics. I'm just giving like a really broad, like dividing, right? But there are also a lot of people, like I said, that you're right, they have gotten intermarried, like I said, because of during times of when they couldn't agree, they were trying to kill each other, and they were like, listen, we're all going to die here, so let's just marry you to this one here, just get married and stop fighting and just try to live in peace. So yes, indeed, there's been all of that marriages. But the Y chromosome keeps going from father to son. The mother's mtDNA keeps going, which is like the X chromosome, I guess, mother to daughter. And that's what these people would be looking for. And that's why the firstborn and they had like their laws of who would be the first to rule, or to be like if the king died, who was the next one in line. And that's why they are killing each other always too, brothers and sisters and mothers and daughters and fathers and daughters. It's really sad. Everyone, if you read history, everyone has like the Hollow Crown by Shakespeare also. That's shocking, because they just show you that they have no pity, even for themselves. They don't care. I feel sad for everyone. And yes, we're really mixed, but they can still figure out and maybe clone, like some people say. But I don't think there's a need to clone, because we have the descendants still alive.
Chad?
No, I was just going back to, going back to Flat Earth to play devil's advocate. You said it's a psyop, but there are people who make a full-time living out of going around and being content creators, like David Weiss, Eric Dubay, and such. That Eric Dubay has written a book, 200 Proofs That the Earth is Flat. And they provide a lot of what they call science to back it up. If Earth was a psyop and it was really just, made up by these they or elite to confuse the masses, why is it that there seems to be so much rationale to their arguments, like the curvature of the Earth and the curving of water, and a lot of the arguments they give? Because I had David Weiss on the show, and he was presenting for 2 hours, going up one thing after another, and it seems like it makes sense. So why is that? If the Earth, if it's clearly not a flat, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, to start with, yes, there's a lot of interesting things, and I think that we don't comprehend us, like the science. There's tiers of science, and there are really, really good scientists out there that are not allowed to say what they tell us through NASA. So I agree with that. There's a lot of BS, and they touch up, and they grab their photos and they put the colors they want of outer space. So it does exist, but they change a lot of things. So that they are correct. So it makes it really confusing to think, well, what's real and what's not real if we're not being told anything. So I don't blame them for thinking that way. The problem I have with Flat Earth is that they make it sound like it's a machine that is created by someone. Like we're tiny, right? Like we're tiny and someone created this machine. Because I've looked at all their videos and follow them because I wanted to understand what was going on. So to me, Earth, everything it's created, like, if you know cymatics, everything is bubbles. And matter is created in, not flat. Like flat stuff is not the common thing. Maybe things get broken and get flat, or we create flat things, but nature is usually never flat. So I think that in nature-wise, considering the amazing power of the creator or the creatress of all, it's like, it's just too incredible to me to be made into a little machine-like thing. But I think that if you really believe in that, just go for it. I don't want to like say, no, don't do it. But to me, my understanding and everything I've looked at, it just doesn't make sense for that matter. But if it makes you happy and if you see any benefit on that, for whatever reason, just do it, because we all have a different path on this planet. We have a different path. We have a different degree of understanding, and I've learned a lot of things just in the last 10 years that I didn't know before, and I'm always learning, and I'm never gonna stop learning. I'll never say, I know everything, and you people don't know. No, I would never do that. I would never. But I do think, well, what's important? What is affecting us? What do I see wrong with the world? That to me is more important than fighting. And I see a lot of even plasma physicists fighting. The Thunderbolts project was fighting with McKinney and with Lapointe and everyone fighting, and even with me. And I'm not really a scientist, but like I said, I was saying certain things and I'm thinking, what is going on here? Why is everyone fighting? This is not gonna work. But I guess it's part of the game. Whatever this is, we're just being thrown all these traps, all this stuff, and see if you can see through the whole game and the whole veil of traps and anger and getting upset. So yeah, it's not an easy one to understand, but I think that they just want us, the important thing is that they just want us looking at something over here instead of looking at this over here that we should be looking at, and also understanding how things work and why we are stuck in the place we're stuck. But on the other hand, maybe we're not supposed to all know, and maybe this is the way that works.
Yeah, I just asked it because of curiosity, and also there might be some people that believe in flat Earth that are watching this podcast, and maybe they kind of had that question too. So I've had globe earthers like yourself and Billy Carson on, and I wasn't even going to bring up the flat Earth with Billy Carson because I know he thinks it's a psyop as well. And then I've had people like David Weiss on and some others who believe in the flat Earth, but because I believe that this is a simulation, of course, my belief, I think it's very possible it could be flat. It could be just the globe Earth theory, like you were saying, with suns and galaxies, and it could be something else too. I don't know. I don't understand personally why it's so difficult to measure the Earth or see what the shape is. I know you said that a gentleman went up in the balloon really high and could see the curvature. You know, I'd love to see a picture.
I'd like to see that too.
Can I say something? I forgot. Yes, yes. Speaking of that, you know, the planets also don't necessarily all have to be totally round. They could be like, have a little bit weird shapes, especially smaller planets and planetoid-like objects. They can be, they can have different shapes. But what I was going to say about the waters above, which also Ken was asking, there is so much water in space. That's the other thing. Space is not cold, in my opinion. It's not cold, or from the data and from the scientists and the scientists of the ancient times, which were the natural philosophers, and the records of witness records of what was going on. It's hot. There's a lot of water. It's wet, and it's not like an ocean. It's not like a fishbowl. I don't want to say that it's like a fishbowl, but there is a lot of water out there. And when there are novas, the stars create through the Mark-Lund convection, which is also experimented on the laboratory and tested, and they can create elements. Is with all these electromagnetic fields, you create elements. And so there's water as well. So we capture water, but Earth could also be producing water from in the interior, because Tesla talked about, and other people talked about, planets expanding, which is really fascinating as well. That's another thing that no one talks about.
Should be alive, yeah.
Yeah,
Growing.
So I think that planets are formed like this. There's like a plasma birthing of a star. And that star is so hot. It's so hot, and it starts producing elements. But not only outside, also inside. Tesla said, and this other scientist, I can't remember his name, but I have a video about this, that the ether incoming, which is electromagnetic fields and plasma, you can call it plasma, entering the object, if you want to believe that theory, or for a moment say, okay, maybe that's, instead of the flat Earth, let's just play for a minute and say, okay, if that was happening, the ether would come in and it would transmute because of the electromagnetic currents, and just, it's what happens in the lab. It would create elements. So Earth would have water inside, but also plasma, as in form of volcanoes that create what happens. It starts to rupture. The volcanoes come out in certain parts, which is like a circuitry, anodes and cathodes, according to the electric Earth of Andrew Hall, which he's awesome. He compares Earth to the Sun and Jupiter, like a circuitry, and every planet should be the same. So they open up, volcanoes erupt, and this magma, it's like fluid plasma, is filled up with elements, and all these elements create life after destroying everything, that what's left in there, all the ashes and the hardened rock. It starts to expand Earth. So that's another way of thinking about it. So water comes in through capture by the tails of comets, and also just traveling through the cosmos, which is filled with water, but not as we're going to drown. No, don't think about it as we're going to leave the plasma sheet, which is counter-rotating currents. Everything has these in different degrees, but most planets have it, and comets also. And so the water would be out there getting captured. So that lack of water is pure BS. And the atmospheric rivers that we are seeing and all this flooding, crazy, it's water incoming onto Earth. And there's also interior oceans that people have talked about. And I don't think Earth is hollow, like the hollow Earth, where people say there's, like a sun in interior sun and people living in the ocean. No, I think it's more like cavities. There's interior oceans, ancient oceans. There are people living underground in cities, or vents of volcanoes and all that kind of stuff.
Are there any ancient texts that talk about inner Earth? Because I vaguely remember them being talked about, but I don't know what texts that they were.
Well, a really good one. Well, you just have to look at the mythologies and histories, the legends of all the natives, and they tell you that the caves and entrances to underground Earth were the gods. That's where the gods lived. So I think that because there were so many catastrophes, they had, their amazing pyramids and amazing, even in the medieval times, the castles had all bunkers underground because they were still having problems with comets and passing comets and Venus and Mars approaching, and the moon getting close. So they would go underground, and they would have just like animals, grain, water, wells, wells, spring water, and they could survive like that. The Hopi talk about the ant people, and it seems like the Egyptians and the Sumerians were there. They found in the 1970s in a cave in Chaco Canyon the symbol of Anu, the star symbol of Anu, and Sumerian cuneiform writing. And this was like a public thing. I made also a video and wrote a paper on this. So they do talk about these people, that they would come out. They would bring like the elites, only the elites, not everyone, bring the elites down to their underground cities. And then after the catastrophes, they would come and take them out again, and they would guide them in and out, well, especially in, because there was so much going on that they couldn't see, volcanism and darkness and just crazy stuff. And the Mayas have the same thing. The people in Peru, I was just listening to someone talk about these amazing tunnels. There's just underground tunnels. And also in Mexico, someone was saying that I've seen tunnels like from churches, and heard stories that a church up in the mountains would have tunnels, underground tunnels, connecting all the way down to other places, down, further, like 20 kilometers away or 10 kilometers away. So people wanted to survive. They wanted to hide, in case they were getting attacked or they were trying to get killed. So that's what I have to say about inner Earth. But I've never heard the story of, like they're telling us now.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting towards the tail end, but before we lose time, I just wanted to get into the Mandela effect. Is that okay, Ken, if I ask that?
Oh yeah. I only had Mandela. My big things left were Mandela effect and the Gnostic, Gnosticism and Gnostic text and Gnostic knowledge, mystery school stuff. Those were the two big ones that I have remaining that I definitely want to hear her thoughts on, or what she knows. Yep.
Yeah, no, I was curious to know, Tess, because I started becoming aware of the Mandela effect maybe 9 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. It was a revelation, really, when it first happened, to think that reality could change like that, because I know people say it's false memory. I wanted to know what your belief is. Do you think it's false memory? Do you think it's a real phenomenon? I personally think it's real. And also, what do you think is causing it? I'm not sure what's causing it, but I think it could have something to do with CERN, or it could have something to do with a hiccup in the programming of the reality. You already stated you don't believe this is a program. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yep. Well, even though I don't believe it's a computer program per se, I think that we're very manipulated indeed, and they have all this amazing technology, and it is sort of like a play. So it's not totally in disagreement with what you believe. Okay, well, I think that the Mandela effect is good to define it. So people that don't know, like I didn't know exactly what it meant, I went to look at it, and it says that it refers to a situation in which a large mass of people believes that an event occurred when it did not occurred. And the term was originated in 2009 by Fiona Broom, after she discovered that she, along with a number of others, believed that Nelson Mandela had died in the 1980s, when he actually died in 2013. And so what I have to say about this is that I am not really sure what is going on there, but I do know that the meaning of words has been changed purposely many times. Like I said, in the 1800s, they changed a lot of what was considered something to have a meaning. They just changed it, and they just can change it anytime and do that. They do that to names as well, words, or to be politically correct, or people that moved from one country to another, they have to change their names or their pronunciation because people cannot pronounce them. So there's a lot of stuff going on that way. But I think that our reality and our beliefs can be manipulated, for sure. And there's different techniques and means, like MK Ultra, the power of suggestion, propaganda, religion, schooling, entertainment, the entertainment industry, and just doing it like they have been doing. And you can see the changes in words, the definitions of words, just by going to the Dictionary of Etymology, and you can see there how much a word has been changed, and including you can look at simulation, and you can look at hologram. Hologram meant wholesome, healthy. That's what hologram meant. Did you know that? And simulation meant a copy of.
Yep.
A copy of, or a copy of in order to do an experiment. So that's really interesting. So that's kind of like in the 1950s and forward that those meanings were given and come from. So I think that would help people to understand what's going on. And
when did you first become aware of the Mandela effect? It wasn't my questions, obviously, right? It was before that.
Yeah, I never really thought it was a problem or per se a something that was going on, but I do know that there is MK Ultra being practiced through chemical and electromagnetic fields and many other technologies that I don't even know exactly, but I've heard of a lot of different through DARPA and experiments that they've been doing on people and masses of people as well, including the US and in Europe during the world, what was it? The world where people, they were playing something like, oh, the aliens are invading over a radio show.
War of the Worlds.
Yep. Yeah, War of the Worlds, exactly. So
Project
they've been
Bluebeam.
doing this. It's nothing new. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a combination of that it happens just because we are living in different realities. That could be an interesting question, but I think that information can be, our brain is so complicated that, yeah, I'm not sure exactly of what was going on there. But I was going to say before we finish talking, I also wanted to talk about the Enki Lucifer, the simulation, which you asked. Can I answer that now?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so in my opinion, Enki, like the Anunna, the rest of the Anunnas, which were called gods, where they were, or he was mere mortal, just like the rest of humanity and the rest of the gods. They didn't really have eternal lives, not at all. They died and then they became the planets to embody the planets. And therefore, they didn't have that much power. From my ebook called Lucifer, Venus, and the prophet Isaiah. This is really telling because the prophet Isaiah, who was the astronomer or prophet for King Hezekiah, he was relating events that took place or were going to take place during his lifetime. So that's really important. Prophets were talking about their lifetime. They were not talking about thousands of years in the future. And that was around 700 BC. He announced the end of the world. He speaks of Hellel, Lucifer, Venus, having come down or fallen down to earth. And the name Venus stems from Latin venire, which means to come. Venus falling down means that Venus approached Earth, and the electric interactions of the plasma sheath of each planet caused innumerable catastrophes, as it always happens, including famine, pestilence, droughts, floods, orbital changes, volcanism, global cooling, etc. And Hellel, or Lucifer, Venus, is referred to as the winged serpent, similar to the Mayan Quetzalcoatl, who also represented Venus around 1500 BC. The prophet astronomer Isaiah is acting as the messenger of Yahweh, whose message is that the winged serpent, this is what it says in the text, the winged serpent, Venus, will be sent down again to punish and cause destruction to the enemies of Yahweh, who were the kings of Babylon, the enemies, Marduk and his son Nebo and Nabu. Since the time of Hammurabi around 2000 BC or 1500 BC, Marduk, especially after 1000 BC, Marduk and Nebo became chief deities. And Marduk rewrote the Sumerian tablets of creation, called it the Numa Elish, and in it supplanted his father's enemy and half-brother Ea, Enki, for Saturn. Ea used to represent Neptune before, and this is talking about Saturn, the important planet. Saturn used to be Elil or Ninurta, but I think Elil, the father of Ninurta, or Adad, the chief deity at the time, due to the catastrophes, because we probably were closer to Saturn, and the flood was caused by Saturn. That was the waters coming from above, but there was also flooding coming from below. Like water was coming out, from below and above, and it was warm, it was hot, it wasn't cold. This water, it's interesting, and so the chief deity became Marduk, and he became to represent Jupiter. Just because he became the chief deity, he became like the dictator. And he said that his father was Saturn, because Saturn used to be the main honcho before him, but Jupiter was the one that we were close to at the time. So the catastrophe is being caused by Jupiter around 2100 BC, but also by Neptune. Neptune was close by. And Yahweh, Elil son Ninurta, or Hadad, or An-El, Cronus, Ea, were the enemy gods combined in one in the Bible. To truly understand sacred texts like the Old Testament and the Bible, we need to understand that this enmity, like I've been talking about, between the royal bloodlines that have existed since the dawn of civilization. So civilization was brought by them. So anytime you hear civilization, that's when it all started, and the written records. The HebrewNations.com is a great source. I recommend you guys go there, because then you can see how the tribes divided and once became the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Gnostics, and how they've been fighting. And that's what we know most of it right now, plus the Muslims as well. That's an important group there. And the work of Sir Lawrence Gardner is amazing too. He has very detailed genealogies, and he goes as far. He was a royal genealogist to the Scottish royals, and Nicholas de Vere especially. He got Sirred, and so became a lord. And he says that, yes, he says that they descend from the Anunnas. He just says it like that. But his timeline is wrong. It's too long. But he says that, here, I'm almost done. So he says in Genesis of the Grail Kings, which is a great book, the 12 tribes of the Hebrews, including the tribe of Judah, known as the Jewish people, worshipped many gods who represented many planets that had caused catastrophes on Earth, including Saturn, called El, or the Elohim, plural for El, who probably was Enlil, first represented by Enlil. El supplanted the previous chief ruler and father of all the gods, who was Anu, Uranus, previously. Father of Enlil, or Enlil, and his son Ninurta, known as Hadad or Adad, were also known as Baal or Baal. And Marduk became known as Bel. And the young Bel, the older Bel was his dad, Enki. Amun Ra, and Hamon, and his father Enki, Ea, supplanted Enlil as Saturn Kronos. And I propose that Marduk is the, you can find this through the Pythagorean information. It's the god that most people are worshiping in religion, sadly. And Amen is after Amun when we finish praying.
So that is Lucifer.
Well, it became to known as Lucifer.
Marduk is Lucifer?
No, he was really Jupiter, but at the time of this written, 700 BC, he was kind of put together and called Venus. Venus was Lucifer, but he also represents maybe Marduk, maybe Nabu, the line of Enki, the enemy tribes of Enlilites. So the Enkiites and the Enlilites, they're like the big two that you can see, the eagle, Enlil, and Enki is the serpent and the dragon. So every time you see serpents and dragons, that means that was their bloodline all around the world. And in castles, you see, the lions or the dragons or certain animals. Unicorn is the line of the Gnostics.
So I've seen both. Jesus. I've seen, and I haven't done the research that you've done, so, pardon my incorrection, but I've seen and heard Enki as being the evil one, and I've heard Enki was the genetic scientist that helped humanity one, and that Enlil was the Lucifer line. Which, in your interpretation, are they both kind of mixed, or and the serpent Enki, is that have something to do with the caduceus as well? The serpent around DNA?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. See, Marduk and Thoth, or Thoth.
Yeah.
Thoth. Some people pronounce it differently, but which was the Trismegistus. The Hermes. Hermes. Yes, Mercury was represented by the caduceus, because Mercury's tail was looking like a caduceus, and many comets have looked like that. I mean, even there's a book called the Book of Miracles that is talking about the plasma phenomena of comets that they could see, and other phenomena during planetary catastrophes or cosmic catastrophes, and they show comets that had the tail of the caduceus. So that's where that comes from. But yes, it's been used to represent these tribes, and both, in my opinion, because they have been fighting, so you have to see who wrote the text. They make each other evil, and allegedly, according to the story, the Anunnas did not want to mix their blood or get it impure, or degrade the blood with the earthlings that were not their own negative blood. But Enki, because he was not the boss of Earth like Enlil was, he was just pissed, and he said, screw it, I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to create my own bloodlines that are going to worship me, because I'm going to give them the knowledge. They're going to be my bloodlines. So he did, and that's the story of like the deluge and the whole, we're going to kill the giants, the evil giants. That was because Enlil was upset, but it was nature who caused the flood, not really him. But they wanted to pretend that they were the gods and they had the power, so it was all given to him. So to the Gnostics, Lawrence Gardner tells you that Enlil was bad. He was the bad one. He wanted to kill humans, and he didn't tell humans that the flood was coming, so he just let them die because they were annoying. But then the Enlilites tell you that Enki is the evil serpent of the Garden of Eden, and he mixed with Lilith and Eve and had sex, and Cain, and they're evil. So we're going to take them out of the Bible because they're evil. We're not even going to mention them. Just forget about them. They don't exist. And then they created their bloodlines. And what's true and what is not true exactly, I don't know, because they have been changing it so much. But what I can tell you is that they have been fighting with each other, and that's where you can get out of it. And we are the pawns between their game. And until we understand this, everyone gets it. We might maybe we can stop fighting. But there's people that are greedy and they just get money or get paid, and they'll say, screw it, I don't care about the human race. Who cares? I just want to have a good life, so I'll do whatever. So it's, I don't know. I don't know.
Is that the fighting that you see what's going on now? The polarity of good and evil is between.
Oh yes.
Possibly between Enki's bloodline and Enlil's bloodline.
Yeah.
Is that how you see it?
Yeah. And they also have changed allegiance. You see this like in history, two brothers would fight for different people. So they would be family, but they would be fighting for a different tribe or side of the tribe, like in the War of the Roses. That's what was going on. And what happened to them? They ended up killing each other. They ended up getting rid of the bloodline because they were so greedy. They ended up killing their bloodline. So that's what happened to them. They just disappeared. And then some others, I guess they just, I don't know. It's really sad, but I don't want to be pessimistic, but maybe it's the reality of what makes this planet just very hard to be just everything lovely and nice. Let's all sing together, kumbaya, and get along, and take care of each other and the planet. Let's stop fighting. If there's a catastrophe, let's just help each other. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if people have it in them, the interest. Maybe it's more interesting and fun to be evil, and to be a jerk.
Be self-centered. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask you, if you could sum up the ancient knowledge of the Gnostics, who, what was the knowledge that they were trying to portray? Was it a religious-based ascension? Was it just making the best out of a bad situation? And was there talk? What have you found in their teachings or their writings that may have some kind of a soul trap, kind of that kind of connotation about ascending or leaving this cycle of reincarnation, I guess?
Yeah, there's a great subject. Some people talk about karma, the wheel of karma, breaking the wheel of karma. Is this a trap, the soul trap? Do you go to the white light, follow the white light? Don't go there. Don't do this, don't do that. I think, I'm going to tell you that the Gnostic symbols, you also were asking, the Gnostic symbols, the unicorn is a descent from the line of David. The white dove, the chalice, the egg represents the empty DNA of Lilith. The fish represents Enki's lineage. And then, like I said, the Gnostics there's that line. And the Gnostics had the Pythagorean knowledge of everything that there was known, like medicine, music, how to heal with music, the mathematics, astronomy. So the Jews and the Gnostics, you ask me, soul trap and their writings. The Gnostics are the cousins. They're cousins, descended from Enki, Lilith through Cain, symbolized by the serpent, dragon lineages. And Lawrence Gardner talks about this beautifully, like he loves this because that's his lineage. And the enemies of the descendants of everyone else, basically, they're enemies of everyone else, especially the Enlilites, who is through Esau or Edom as Germany, mostly represented by Germany, known as the Holy German Roman Church, and symbolized by the eagle and the double-headed eagle. So I don't know if that answers your question, but they do have the secret knowledge. There's that bloodline, Enki, Lilith through Cain, symbolized by the serpent, the dragon lineages, the dove, the chalice. That's the chalice, the remember the whole thing about what is the
covenant?
Sangre real, the Holy Grail. What is the Holy Grail? It's the bloodline. It's the bloodline. Empty DNA plus Y chromosome of these people. I don't know if that answers your question. So there's no good and bad for me. They're all as bad. They're all bad. They're all bad because they lie to us and they keep us ignorant. And that's not cool.
Nope. We're all looking for truth. That's why we're here.
But there's hope. This is not it. This is not everything.
What do you think happens?
So
what do you think happens when we die? Do you think that we are immortal?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Consciousness?
I think that each person should be able to choose what they want to do. I choose to be the void. A lot of the Buddhists want to become the void. They don't want
Right.
to.
Yep.
They don't want to do anything, and maybe later on they change. I don't know, because we're like consciousness. So that's a really good question, right? It's like, when does consciousness, if we die, do we get like meshed up with all this consciousness, and then we're part of all the other consciousness? It sounds kind of confusing, but I don't like to believe anything that I'm told. Like, oh, or this guy says, this is the process of ascension, because I already went through this, right? I already started this, and a lot of things that they told me didn't happen. So I'm not falling for it again. And I just decide to be my own creator. Like, I choose to create my own whatever. Once, if I cannot manifest everything I want here, at least I can try to manifest what I want after death. So I think you can come back if you're really attached. I mean, I've heard people that say, oh, I have so much stuff in my house. I have so many projects to do. I need to live long. And maybe those people come back because that's their values and their goal. But for me, not at all. I'm like, I'm done with this place. I've been here long enough, maybe many lifetimes. Who knows? I don't know. But I'm like, I'm done. I'm ready to go somewhere else. I'm not, and this is boring for
Ready
me.
to try something different?
Yeah, or either rest. Do you want to just become the void? Do you want to become a nebula? Do you want to become a planet or a sun and go and, have zapping interactions with other planets, because that's what they do, and go nova and just go crazy all the time? Or do you want to become an animal? I don't know. It's up to each person, I think. That should be cool. And I would like
MJ,
that.
you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, just in summary, because you say you don't want to be pessimistic, but we've established some challenges to humanity. But do you think part of our journey is just to be aware of this, or do you think there's a potential for us to create this reality that's possible?
Well, again, that's a wonderful question too, because I don't think anyone should give up and say, oh, well, I can't do anything. I'm just going to, be like a rug, let everyone come and step all over me. No, I think that we should keep trying the best that we can. We should do the best we can. We should be the best we can be. We should be kind, loving, if that's what we want to get back. The law of nature. They say there's a law of man and the law of nature. What you give comes back to you, hopefully. I mean, sometimes it doesn't seem to be that way here on Earth, because some people do something good and then something bad happens to them. So you're like, well, what's going on there? Or why is the child getting abused? The child just was born. What doesn't make sense? But maybe people say, well, it's karma from past life. But then do you allow that? Do you just sit there and allow it because that person must have been bad in a previous lifetime? I think that's dangerous. So I think we should just keep doing the best that we can and try to protect ourselves, of course, and say, no, this is what I do. I'm Pacific. I'm a pacifist. I don't go and fight. I don't want to kill anyone. I'm not interested in fighting, but I'm interested in telling people the things I know in hope to create a better place. So we have less fighting and more lovemaking, more peace, more fun, more loving, if possible. If possible, to learn that way, if we have to learn anything, because some people say you need duality to learn. So it gets complicated.
I think I believe in the duality to learn. I think there's a limit to how much suffering we should take. But there's also a limit to how much suffering you should endure yourself and how much you control of that. So that's what I've learned the past few years in dealing with that, is that you can control yourself. It's easy, but you choose or don't choose to do that. Chad, do you have any closing words, questions, comments?
No, I just think it was a very wide-ranging and comprehensive interview. And I thank Tess for coming on, and maybe one day you'll come on my show.
Yes, I'd love to. And I want to encourage people. Well, thank you first of all for letting me share my thoughts and my work. And I would like to encourage people to go onto my website. Everything I offer, I have for free. You can make a donation if you can. But everything is there for free. So, and all the links to the sources and to other people's works and that I appreciate, or historic texts that I think are really interesting, and cometographers. So they can just take a look and decide, try to, I know it takes time, but it could be really fascinating. I think it's always so fascinating to me when I find new things. And to not make up your mind and a decision right now, because this is just 2 hours, 1 hour that we had. You cannot know everything where I've taken this from. So just let it sit there on the shelf of maybe, and just go and research and make up your own mind.
And your website is mythosdecoded.com, is correct?
.wixsite.com/mythos, but you can just put the link there in the video.
Yeah. If you can email me what you want me to put in the description, I'll be happy to do that for you, and I'll link it into the video as well a few times also.
All right. Well, thanks, Chad, and all of you for being open to talk to someone who doesn't believe in the flat earth per se, but again, I think that this is more important. What we have to talk about,
absolutely
important things, are way beyond that, and it doesn't bother me if people believe that, and I don't think lesser of them, or I don't want to judge.
No, we're all looking for knowledge, and I think, and peace as well too. So but thank you so much, Tess. We appreciate it. I'll have this posted to you probably in the next day or so. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.